How's
Hi,
it going?
it's going pretty well. How are you?
I'm okay. Can you see me? Am I
Yeah.
like lit enough?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's like I we don't have the best light in the office. I got one of these like these things that you're
Ooh,
supposed to use, but I don't know. Like when I put it in front of me, like I feel like Dracula. So
I
thought
love
I'd put it over here.
I love like all the photos in the back. I think that's really cool.
I thought I'd do that just for you.
So, how are you doing? How's quarantine going?
Quarantine is going just fine. I consider myself very lucky because my family is healthy. And oh, are we recording? Hold on, start over, start over.
All right.
Okay, you gotta tell your mom. Okay, you gotta tell me when we're recording.
Okay.
Okay, and
Hi, how are you doing?
doing good, Olivia. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having the time to join me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, you were the very first female Thunderbird pilot. Can you talk to us about your journey to becoming that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. When I was a little kid, like 5 years old, I went to an air show. I saw a fighter aircraft fly and pretty much made the decision at that time that I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I stayed focused on that through elementary school, junior high, high school, found myself at the Air Force Academy. Graduated from there in 1996, where I received my commission into the Air Force and went to pilot training after that. So once I had finished pilot training, I was able to select the aircraft that I had really wanted to fly, which was called the F-15E Strike Eagle. I went to training there, had an opportunity to fly in 3 operational F-15E squadrons before I applied to be a Thunderbird. That's kind of quick and dirty fast forward to the Thunderbirds.
That is amazing. I can't believe that you were able to stay so focused on that one goal for so long. I
I
mean,
guess you could say, yeah, as a kid, I was maniacally focused. I always tell people I'm really glad that it worked out because I literally did not have a backup plan.
all right. So you contracted Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses while in the military. So would you tell us where you were and how many doctors it took for you to be correctly diagnosed?
Yeah, you bet. So it was about the summer of 2012 when I was bit by a tick. I was stationed at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I presented with the summer flu. I now know, of course, that the flu doesn't happen in the summer, but at the time I had the low grade fever, malaise, joint pain. I also presented with what I now know is the typical EM rash on my right hip. Unfortunately, due to a lack of education and awareness on both my part and the military doctors who saw me, I was not accurately diagnosed. I was told that it was most likely a spider bite, which is reflected in my medical records. I was given a topical ointment and 5 days of antibiotics and sent on my way. Within 3 months, I started having neurological symptoms. So your pins and needles, numbness. I started having coordination problems with my right hand, my right leg, problems reading and writing. And then once I started having problems with, my word finding and my speech, the doctors grew a lot more concerned. Unfortunately, at the time, they kind of weren't thinking tick-borne illness. During that time, I would move to Rhode Island, where literally 10 months after my EM rash in North Carolina, I would pull a tick off of my right thigh while I was stationed there attending Naval War College. I am 100% confident that that's where I gained my babesia because it came on with the night sweats and the fevers that are very typical of babesia. Unfortunately, the doctors were kind of going down different paths, taking a look at things like multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, all of those things that I think are familiar to our community. And 4 years would pass. In August of 2016, so 4 years after my rash in North Carolina, I was living in Washington, D.C., working at the White House, and I just started falling apart. The list of my symptoms, actually at their worst, were 63 long. I woke up one day and I couldn't move or talk, and it was extraordinarily scary. It was a temporary moment, but the military finally did the right thing, I think, and sent me up to Boston, where I was able to see some specialists at the Dean Center for Tick-Borne Illness. That's where I was accurately diagnosed. So from the time of my initial rash in 2012 to my diagnosis was 1,525 days of unnecessary suffering and unnecessary tests and hardship, and obviously degrading function to the point that I was 100% dependent on other people. And let's see, I saw more than 24 doctors across 8 specialties, and I had 3 misdiagnoses along the way. So that's my story, kind of in a nutshell. Sorry, that was a little long.
All right. So now that you are on treatment and certain things like that, what do, I guess, your Lyme disease days look like today, and how many days did it take for you to, I guess, recover to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So when I began treatment in the fall of 2016, I was on a PICC line of IV ceftriaxone for 3 months. And then I was on a cocktail of different antibiotics and, of course, antiparasitics for that babesia for quite a while, probably another year, kind of off and on, depending on what the doctors were treating at the time. In there, though, I also had to go to rehab, notably vestibular rehab, because I had picked up a very major balance deficit. So for my recovery, from the time I put that PICC line in to the time that I've gotten to where I am now, took almost 2 years to the day. And that was a really difficult thing for me to wrap my mind around. You know, I was a fighter pilot. I was a really high performing, physically fit, mentally fit person. And I was completely broken, 100% disabled, unable to care for myself. And I remember being so excited when these amazing doctors in Boston, I had a whole comprehensive team to include Massachusetts General Hospital, you know, rallied around me and said, we figured it out. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to get like 1 pill and 1 shot in the arm, and I'm going to be back flying jets. And I remember looking and asking them, how long is this recovery going to take? And the doctor looked right at me, one of them, and said, based on how long you've been sick and how sick you are, I think 2 years. And I just, you know, I was floored. That was a hard thing, you know, to get my mind around. But the beauty of that moment is I realized, okay, you know, my flying career is over, my Air Force career is over, but I have to put my health first. The most important thing is giving 100% and prioritizing this recovery for myself, for my husband, and for my children. You know, for 2 years, I couldn't functionally really interact with my own kids. And that's a hardship. Yeah, 2 years.
Wow, that is incredible. So we met at the Tick-Borne Disease Working Group inaugural meeting in DC, and I think that at the time you were just about to be medically retired from the military because of your tick-borne illnesses.
Yes.
I guess, what was your, I guess, first reaction, a bit more in detail, when you realized that you were going to lose everything that you have been working so hard for?
Yeah, I met you 13 days before my medical retirement. And I remember thinking, do I want to go public on the record while I'm still in the military about what happened? And I thought, you know, I only have this 1 shot right here for this opening inaugural meeting to share my story. And, you know, I felt compelled to do that. When I discovered that I was going to be medically retired, I think I had a spectrum of emotions. You know, part of me was just so focused on my recovery and trying to get healthy and trying to follow all my therapy and follow all my medications and rest. And I was, you know, part of me was very forward looking, but I mean, I was a fighter pilot. And the fact is I am type A kind of person. And it was very hard to realize that, you know, I didn't ask to be bit by a tick. I didn't ask to get sick. I didn't ask for any of this to happen to me. And to finally just let go. And as a type A person, to let go and just accept that, you know, this is the reality of the situation. So, I mean, I was very sad. My whole identity, I had spent my life since I was 5 years old to achieve, you know, becoming a fighter pilot. I had been I had been in the military since I was 17. You know, it was all I ever knew in my identity. And to have that stripped away overnight, you know, was absolutely devastating. And there were parts of me, as I still float in and out of it today, that honestly gets angry. At the time, I was a lot more angry. I'm a lot more positive about it now because I'm trying to do something about it, like you, trying to channel some of that anger into something that's positive to help other people. But at the time, you know, I was angry. I thought, how was it that I spent this long in the military, the Department of Defense, And we never talked about ticks. How is it I didn't know how to prevent that tick bite, that I didn't know how to look for and recognize the symptoms? How is it that my military medical provider didn't know it? Because it was also, is equally uneducated. Because from my perspective, what cohort of the American public is exposed to more global vector-borne illnesses, to include tick-borne illnesses, than our military people? I mean, I don't know that there's a larger cohort, and we're constantly moving around. And let's be honest as well, we need to consider the fact that military families, dependents, spouses, and military children who live all around the world from Japan to Germany are exposed to different strains of tick-borne illnesses that, simply put, our military medical providers are not trained or resourced to look for. So I guess a little bit of hopefulness that I was going to get better, sadness for what I lost, and anger that it happened, kind of all wrapped into a moment.
I bet that there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing those emotions as well. So speaking of doing something about it, you are now advocating and helping other vets that have tick-borne diseases. Can you tell me what you were doing to help in the fight?
Yeah, you bet. So, well, the first thing I did was join forces with you, young lady, right? You're a powerhouse for change, and not just at the local level where you started, but look at what you're doing now for national and federal policy. So I admire you, and it's a joy to join alongside of you. So I do serve as what's called a trained ambassador and a trained mentor for the official Air Force Wounded Warrior program, which brings me a lot of joy. And I'm kind of sad to say that I'm always mentoring someone who's being medically discharged because of tick-borne illness. And, that shouldn't be happening. But what I do is I try to connect with them and validate their feelings. All those feelings that we just talked about, I want them to know that it's normal for them to feel those things, and that they have somebody to talk to who understands. I think for those of us with tick-borne illness, it's an invisible illness. And a lot of times people go, well, you look great, right? What do you mean? You look just fine. And to just be able to connect with someone where you don't have to explain yourself, it's just accepted and understood. So I provide that kind of camaraderie and that validation for them. I also talk to them about recovery, share the resources that I've learned over the last 8 years, right, that are available to them. I think, well, maybe you'll agree that the treatment and recovery just varies so wildly for everybody. And the options that are out there, it's really an individualized thing. And it should be between a doctor and a patient to figure out, what's best. So I try to present the options to them so they can do, what's best for them in that treatment, and how to talk and interact with their doctors in a way that moves the ball forward. And the last thing is I help them out a lot with what is a completely, I believe, unnecessarily complex medical evaluation board process. So what we have oftentimes is wounded, ill, and injured people who are dealing with their own health issues, none of which they asked for. And then we pile a massively time-consuming, stressful, and bureaucratic process on top of them. The Air Force knows I feel this way, so I have no problem stating this publicly. It's a process that needs to be improved. Thank goodness for the Air Force Wounded Warrior program, because it does provide support and relief during that time. And that's what I try to do, is to help these people who raise their right hand to serve their country, right, through the process so that they can transition successfully.
Wow, that is incredible. I would also like to thank you for coming up with the idea of tickmojis. I think that a lot of people love them, and they can also use them to identify ticks if they don't have tick tracker or any other pictures of ticks around them. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a nice combination, like you said, of education and awareness, also with a little bit of fun. If I really want to scare my friends, I can zap them a picture, of a tick there. But it's interesting because I never really was someone who, maybe it's my generation, I don't know, you're young and fun, but I was never an iPhone person or social media. But when I found myself bedridden and housebound for nearly 2 years as part of this recovery, that was my only connection to the outside world. And I think it's really interesting as a survivor of late stage tick-borne illness to watch the world go through this whole coronavirus crisis. Because we see everyone having to turn to these online platforms, and social media to get what they need, which is that meaningful connection. And there's part of me that sometimes gets a little jealous because I think, well, I laid in bed for 2 years and I was housebound for 2 years and I didn't feel like anybody cared. But now I love the fact that people are so aware and caring about everyone that's isolating during this crisis. I think a lot of tick-borne illness patients are probably feeling like me sitting there going, yeah, told you so, but we are in this together. And, there's a lot of lessons learned. And I think our community in a lot of ways is coming into this coronavirus crisis almost in an advantage, if that sounds weird, but almost with an asymmetric advantage because of how strong we've had to be and how much we've had to endure just to get where we are.
I am still waiting for you to get a Snapchat account too. So this quarantine, you might want to take a look at that.
I'm like super Gen X. I'm sure you saw I finally on Instagram and Twitter, which was like a big deal for me.
I was like the second person to follow you. I felt so honored. Yes.
Well, thank you. I now have 2 followers. I'm trying, Olivia. I'm trying.
We'll get there. Don't worry. Okay. So in February, you and I went to the Capitol Hill to lobby to the Senate and to the Hill for the Kay-Hagan Tick Act. And now with COVID, it seems like no one is talking about Lyme disease and ticks and other tick-borne illnesses, but they should be because ticks are here, and this might be one of the most worst tick seasons ever because now everyone is outside biking and walking because they're all trapped in their houses and they have no work anymore. So how can we get the government to start caring about tick-borne diseases again?
Yeah, so I mean, none of us could have predicted coronavirus. I mean, this is obviously a crisis of global, proportions, and I share some of that same disappointment. We had reached some momentum there, with Capitol Hill and everything, and then boom, just as we were getting, the tick-borne education awareness rising in the media to levels that, we appreciated, coronavirus came along. But to your point, I also see with any challenge that there's always going to be the flip side of that coin, right? There's going to be opportunity, and you hit the nail on the head. People are outdoors more now as a whole, at least in the United States, than we ever been. I mean, people who almost never went outdoors or exercise or hike, it's like the only thing they can do. So, we're seeing this increase, which of course means increased risk, which I think means an increased opportunity for our community to get out there and educate people, whether that's on our social media, just with our Facebook friends, waving over the fence to our neighbor and reminding them to do their tick checks. I think people are going to be more open-minded to it because they are out in nature more because of coronavirus. And so while we have to focus on coronavirus for sure, for ourselves, for our family and our friends, I think that just like in the military, you can have multiple lines of effort that are moving in the same direction. And we as a community cannot give up or stop this drumbeat. Now is not the time for us to take our foot off the accelerator. Now is the time, honestly, I believe, to increase the accelerator. This funding from the Kay-Hagan Tick Act, and thank goodness for the Center for Lyme Action and their work on this. Thank you, Bonnie and Jeff Crater. Everything is lining up administratively. We have to make sure that our representatives that are on Capitol Hill don't forget about this. Send them an email. We're all at home. We probably have a little time on our hands. Send them an email. We need the funds for this. Give a call. Now, if you've never been politically active, I think this is a great reason and a great time to pick up the phone or to type an email.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that 100%. I think the time is now.
Absolutely.
All right, so now that you have moved into my home state of Colorado,
love it.
What's your favorite thing about Colorado so far?
Oh, well, so my favorite thing about Colorado really is the outdoor lifestyle. The fact that my kids can go right out our back door and there's pine trees and hiking trails and fresh air. So the lifestyle itself of being a little bit more active, which I am still physically suffer, with a lot of fatigue, and I manage that like most late stage tick-borne illness patients. And so it's helping to get me a little bit more active just by the environment itself. Now add coronavirus in and I'm walking the dog twice a day. I mean, I couldn't have said that 3 years ago. I couldn't even have imagined that 3 years ago. Now, on a much more functional reason, there's not as many ticks in Colorado, which makes me very happy. They are here and they do carry disease here. I don't want to misnomer that, but it's not like living in Virginia or North Carolina. The second thing is my tick-borne illness. The reason I was kind of locked in that moment in August of 2016 is the infection had gotten to the pons in the area of my brainstem. Long story short, I've been left with some pretty moderate to severe at times autonomic nervous system dysfunction. One of my worst symptoms is heat intolerance. So the much cooler climate of Colorado has impacted my health in a very beneficial way by lowering some of those autonomic nervous system triggers. So long answer once again to your brilliantly short question.
Well, I'm glad that you're liking Colorado.
I am.
Is there any?
If only we could get together, Olivia. We got to get this coronavirus thing out of the way. Mm-hmm. I want to show you my new house.
So amazing. I want to come over. Is there anything else that you would want to cover, whether it be about the military, about tick-borne diseases, about your journey, or anything else?
Gosh, no, I mean, I just want to say to everybody out there, who's watching this and tuning into the Live Live Gala, whether you're a patient yourself, a caregiver, a researcher, or just someone who's, a supporter, thank you for keeping tick-borne illness at the top of your mind. Normally with this gala, it's our major Live Lyme Foundation fundraiser every year. Now is a very difficult time for people to donate, and we completely understand that. I hope you remember that the families we're giving grants to are also struggling with some of the financial and economic impacts. So even if something as small as $5, can make a difference in the lives of these patients. So we respect and appreciate that we're all having to tighten our wallets right now. That includes these children that we're giving grants to. So even a dollar would be something that we would value from you. So if you can, thank you for donating. And if you can't, we understand. Please continue to boost tick awareness and education on your social media and through all of your networking channels.
That was incredible. Thank you so much for having the time to meet with me. And I hope I get to see you after this whole epidemic settles.
Oh, I will definitely see you when this settles, and I'm very proud of you. Thanks for all you do, and pass my love to your parents and your brothers. Oh, and Grandma. Don't forget Barb.
Grandma.
Hi, Barb.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.